Hi everyone, Beth Pensavine here with Beachway Therapy Center. It is National Recovery Month, and we're excited to come with a 4-week series for you, speaking and sharing with you their hope of recovery for all of you out there in the audience. Hi Mackensie, how are you?
Good, Beth. How are you?
Good. Let me just turn up my volume here so I can hear you. Thank you for joining us from Minnesota.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
I did share your before picture you sent me.
Yeah.
I did share it with the community,
Mhm.
showing how far you've come, and it really is an inspiration. It was great chatting with you earlier today as well, learning a little bit more about you. And thank you for having the courage to chat with us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, of course. You know, I I just want to be able to hopefully help people who are hurting. I never want someone to be in the position that I was in when I came to Beachway, and yeah.
Well, that's why we want to talk to you. So as it is National Recovery Month,
Yes.
um, there are a lot of people out there struggling. They've had a traumatic event, they've had issues with COVID, they've had issues just dealing with their daily life.
Yeah.
And, your situation was not one of substance abuse, it was of mental health. I know that sometimes people don't understand that they could be separated, but yours is. And you and I were kind of chatting that you had traumatic events, that occurred over a long period of time, and you finally hit your breaking point. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I definitely finally hit a point where my life had definitely become unmanageable. I had gone through a lot of traumatic things in my past that kind of just bubbled under the surface. And, um, a lot of people, you don't really like to talk about what you've been through. You don't want to feel like you're being a burden on anybody or an inconvenience, when you're not feeling great. And, at some point, I had just stuffed so much stuff that I had been going through, kind of just in the depth of my mind, that I think at some point my body was just like, you can't keep doing this to us, man. Like you need to go get help. You need to do something because you're overloaded right now. I think my system was just kind of on overdrive at that point. And I'll share a little bit about what that was like. At my breaking point, I wasn't leaving the house. If I did leave the house, I was, panic attack after panic attack, crying. I at some point, I covered up all of the mirrors in my house because I was having a really hard time looking at myself because I could not and did not recognize who I was looking at in the mirror. And that was just so difficult for me. At some point, I knew that I could not continue to go on like that. Like, it's not a life to live. I'm stuck in the house. I don't want to look at myself in the mirror. Getting up was a chore. I just couldn't do it anymore. And so finally, Beachway. I was like, all right, I have to do something. Um, and are you okay if I share a little bit how I even found Beachway?
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
So my family, they knew something was going on. Obviously, I was living at home at that time with my family, and they were kind of there in the thick of it. And you know, we had called so many places here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and I just wasn't getting the help that I needed. And at that point, it really came, and it was like a desperate point in my life. Like, it was kind of life or death at that point. Um, my mother ended up calling and found Beachway online, and she called. And at first, she had called on a Sunday at like 8 o'clock at night or something like that. And I could, she could not believe that Beachway ended up calling back that same day. 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday, Beachway decided to call. And it was the only place that we had reached out to that gave us a call back. And when you're in the middle of a mental health crisis and you're desperately trying to reach out to places and you're not getting help, to get a call like that was just like a lifeboat, right? Like someone threw me a life raft. I was so thankful for it. So I ended up making the decision to go to Beachway because I was like, these people call on a Sunday. And then after that, I hadn't really decided yet if I was going to go. It was in Florida. I was like, do It's all the way in Florida. I'm in Minnesota. Like, do I even want to travel to go
Yeah,
to
that's a hike.
it's a hike, right? And I hadn't like I don't know, at that point I hadn't been many places in my life and I was like, I'm gonna go there by myself and then talk about all of my issues to these people in a different state. And that was scary. But beach was
Mhm.
calling and they kept checking on me
Mm.
through the next probably couple weeks. And finally I was like, I just felt like this is where I needed to be. So
Mhm.
that's how I ended up actually going to Beachway is they just I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't.
I mean, that's really what makes us different is that we are full of people that actually care.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
that's
really care about the clients, and we don't forget about you. And I always tell people, even if you just have questions for
mhm.
us, it doesn't mean that you're coming or that your loved one's coming, but there's a lot of questions that people
Yeah.
have. You could always just call and ask those questions just to get more comfortable with the process.
Yeah.
So that does give people a lot of courage to do that themselves.
Yeah.
Um, that must have been really hard. And I'm sorry that you went through that. That must have been a really tough time for you. And it really wasn't that long ago. It was about 6 months ago, a year ago.
6 months
Yeah. And the smile on your face really does it all. If anybody has, can give us some likes, some hearts, please, that would be great. So let me ask you a little bit about it when you actually got
yeah.
there. What were the things that you learned and the tools that you received to really be able to come back and live this full life that you're living?
So the number one thing that I think really helped me is I think everyone wants to know when you're going through a mental health crisis or you're going through, let's say, even just like you're sick, right? And you keep going to the doctors and they keep saying, I don't know what you have. Or they keep saying, this is what you have. And you're like, I don't think that's what I have, right? I had going to doctors for 10 years saying, there is something wrong with me. I know you keep telling me it's depression and anxiety, but there is something more going on, and I am not getting the help that I need. So when I went to Beachway, one of the tools that they have is, obviously they have a psychiatrist and wonderful nurses and everybody, they have a full staff there. And I finally figured out, I have OCD, I have, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and dissociative disorder, and kind of just like hearing someone tell me something and it made sense. Like, when you've been searching for a diagnosis for so long and you're finally like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been dealing with. And it just was kind of such a relief for me, and they give you tools to kind of almost like trick your own brain. So when you're going through these types of things, something I learned at Beachway is you start having these things called like maladaptive behaviors, right? You may kind of catastrophize. Like maybe you've been through a lot of hard things, and every time something bad would happen, you think, oh, of course this happened, you know? And they kind of tell you like, if this is the pattern of your life, right, you're going to have these beliefs about it. And, at some point, maybe these beliefs kind of help protect you, but right now they're not serving you anymore. And, I suffer with really bad OCD. I get obsessive thoughts, and me covering the mirrors happened to be my OCD. So what my OCD likes to do is pick apart my face and tell me that this isn't perfect, and then I'll obsess about it. And what they really taught me was you have to challenge those thoughts. One of my thoughts was, and this is gonna sound wild, I was like, my face is messed up. I thought that for such a long, I was like, my face is messed up. And that was like a core belief that I had about myself. And they were just like, who told you that? And I was like, I did. And they're like, but like, why? And I was like, I don't know, because my brain just like tells me that. And they're like, well, what are the arguments? What's the evidence to support that claim that your face is messed up? And I was like, that I think it. They're like, okay, well, what's the evidence that it's not? Let's start there. And I was like, all right, let's start there. And I was like, well, people have told me that, I'm beautiful, and, they like my smile, they like my eyes. And it was kind of almost like this, my OCD was like, excuse me, you're making too much sense. You know, but they really teach you the tools to challenge these behaviors that you've learned over time, especially if you've gone through a lot of trauma, that they're just not serving you any longer. You know, and that really kind of, I think, in my journey, that OCD portion of me, that was really hurting me for a long time. And to be able to now challenge those beliefs, because of what Beachway taught me, has been really liberating, because I realize now that I have a lot of illogical thoughts that are not logical. And if I have these illogical thoughts, I need to counter them with logic. And that's not what I was doing before. I was countering them with my own emotions, which at the time were not real. They were real to me, but they weren't the reality of what was actually happening.
Mm-hmm. That is so interesting. And so just somebody kind of shining that light on you was able to change your whole perspective. And now you've been home for a few months, 4 or 5 months. How does it feel now that you're home and you're back to your, you know, where you've always lived, back to your community of friends and family? How do you feel?
Yeah, so this is where Beachway, you put in a lot of work, right? You go to therapy all day, every day. You're talking about what you're going through, and this, getting out into the real world, is the time to kind of put what they taught you to use. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not always easy, but it's manageable. I've been able to get up every day. I don't have panic attacks every day anymore, and I was having up to 5 a day before I went. I probably have maybe 1 a week. And so, I mean, that's a huge step for me in the recovery process. 5 a day versus 1 a week, I can handle that. That's fine. That's manageable to me. I have moved out of my parents' house. I bought my own condo. I know, is that crazy? And that happened within the last 5 months since leaving Beachway. That's one of the things that Beachway recommended, was to get out on my own, you know, and really start discovering who I am, because what was stripped away from me, I think, really was my identity and who I was. And I covered mirrors because, like, when I would look at myself, I had no idea who I was looking back at. I can proudly say now that none of my mirrors are covered. I still have hard days where, you know, I'm still like, who am I looking at? But then I put the tools to use, and I'm like, it's okay sometimes to still feel bad. Every day is not going to be the best day ever. That's not the reality. That's not anyone's reality. Even if you aren't struggling with a mental health thing, you're not going to have a good day every day. And I think I had that very unrealistic expectation for myself. I'm like, normal people are happy all the time. Like, they can handle their lives so easily. And I'm like, and I had to kind of reality check myself, be like, okay, that's not the reality for hundreds of people, pretty much everybody. But yeah, I've moved out. I've been able to uncover my mirrors. When I have bad days, I've been able to kind of utilize the tools that I've been taught to kind of get myself through the hard times, because recovery is not, I was there 3 months, and 3 months is not going to cure 10 years, but it's going to help me in the years to come.
I did not know 10 years. So
Yeah.
that is just amazing that you're doing so well. And thank you for sharing that. 10 years of having those feelings, and now feeling that you can go on and have your own place, and uncover your mirrors and have your own life. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add to our Facebook community before we sign off?
I think the only thing I can say is, a lot of the time when we're going through mental health, we feel powerless. But at any point in time, we have the power to kind of take our power back. And I feel like that's what Beachway allowed me to do. Sorry, I want to cry, because I
love that. Take our power back.
Yeah, but
that's a perfect quote for National Recovery Month. Well, thank you so much, Mackensie. We're going to be over on Instagram if anybody wants to join us over there. I'll see you in a few minutes over there.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.